You don't become a good communist by going to meetings or memorizing the manifesto. You do it on the streets. You do it with your fists. The rest is bullshit, and you know it.
Gregor, relax. This is not helping the situation. You know, whenever I get frustrated, I just think, what would Lenin do? Gregor, what would Lenin do?
What would Lenin do? What would Lenin do? What would Lenin do? Okay, what would Lenin do? What would Lenin do? Lenin would fuck him up!
Hi.
I agree. Lenin would fuck him up.
Oh shit.
Sal, I can't see you on
I know,
screen.
my cam was broken. Hi! We're the Red Army. Welcome in. I'm Sal.
And I'm Reggie. So we're gonna read The Housing Question
Yes.
by Friedrich Engels.
Friedrich Engels.
Or as Marxist.org likes to say, Friedrich.
Frederick. His name is fucking Frederick. Okay.
Hello to everybody. Hello, Whale. Hello, Quiche.
Reading. Authoritarian. Disgusting.
Readings for nerds.
Also,
A normal person reads.
Blot, I love your fucking your idea to solve the troll problem while you're gone. Thank you very much. Thank you. We appreciate that. Just gonna ban everyone so that there's no problems while Blot's gone.
Yeah. Yeah, it does cover up for when the time you're going to be off, so if you ban everybody, that covers it. So. Oh shit, Sarah.
Hello, Sarah. Welcome in. What would Lennon do? Lennon would fuck him up.
That should be the next emo. WWLD.
For real.
What would Lenin do?
Hey, babe, miss your face. You're so funny. Hi, No Quiche. Welcome in. Welcome in. Nerds are great.
Yeah. I said readings for nerds. I never said nerds are cool.
You should consider the housing question. Oh, got him. Just kidding. I haven't read it. This will be my first read through, so I'm excited. Yeah, I want to get a WWLD bracelet too. Yeah, WWLD knuckle tats. Let's go. Okay, whoa, this is so freaking bright.
Last thing someone sees, what would Lenin do? Fuck him up.
That's so funny. Hello, lacy pajamas. Let me put on some, like, let's see. Is it so...
Since we're reading today, this is the emote that we have to use now.
Yep. So much. That one, I guess it's kind of like more for like the cast than the rest of the people, because that's a thing that we use a lot when people haven't read a lot of theory. And like the thing is like so much unread literature, communist literature. It's like a whole inside
so
joke.
many
It's basically just for me to use and you to enjoy looking at. I'm just kidding. But for real though, if you have any better ideas for emotes, I would love to hear them, because yeah.
I still want that WWLD emote. What would Lenin do?
Yeah, I can take away two and do that.
The
That
funny
would
thing
be
is, that would kind of be like an inside joke for this specific stream.
yeah. But that's how the emotes work though, right? It's supposed to be a joke.
That's how
with
Ahab happened.
Yeah. I mean, we can use it other places. People will not know why we're using it. But fuck 'em. Okay. Do you want to?
Not if you like Comrade Detective. Man, I've never heard Comrade Detective.
Okay,
until a
it's
couple weeks
really
ago,
good. It's really good. I love it.
so I don't doubt it.
So good. It's like two detective. Oh shit! What happened
What
to
the
my?
hell?
Oh my god! I'm frozen. What a disgustingly frozen face.
Okay, either there's fireworks going on,
Or
or
gunshots?
someone's yeah. Oh well, not my problem.
What's wrong with my face? Where are you going, camera? There you are. Yeah, so... What was I saying? I don't know what I was saying. Oh, Comrade Detective's good. You should watch it. That's what I was saying.
I mean, the border's like right there, so.
The border? Oh. So it's probably fucking some cops. Some fucking cops.
I think it sounds more like fireworks, so. I don't know. After the stream is up, I'm gonna go outside and see what's up. Sarah, that'd be a hilarious clip.
Is this too loud?
I support it.
Is the lo-fi okay, or is it too...
I
it
can't
too
hear
loud?
anything.
I know you can't hear it, but...
Oh, okay. I think most of this stream is a Living in the South support group. Yeah.
Wait, is it Halloween right now?
No,
Is it tomorrow?
not for me. Yeah, it's tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know what the hell they're shooting fireworks. I hope it's fireworks.
Halloween Eve!
Or-
Duh. Listen, I don't go anywhere, Von Wall. Where do you want me to go? Trick-or-treating? Like, I'm not taking my kid trick-or-treating. In this pandemic? No. These Floridians, they don't wear a mask. They don't take the vaccine, so they can just... No. Your chat wasn't loaded, bro. Oh, is it your birthday tomorrow? Aw. Well, happy birthday tomorrow. I'll tell you tomorrow. Forget that I said anything.
No, that was maybe a week ago. I think it was Comrade Clevername's birthday, and they weren't on the chat, so I was gonna say happy birthday, but you know,
Oh
weren't there.
no. I hate missing people's birthdays. Okay. Part 1. How do you say his name?
Proudhon.
Proudhon. I always called him Proudhon,
Proudhon.
and that's wrong. It's very wrong. Proudhon. That sounds better. I love how if I've never heard something like oh no, what happened? Oh no, what happened?
Murrow says, also, did you see the article on government preparing for a Gen Z insurrection? Psh, man,
Gen
they wouldn't
Z?
see it coming.
Wait, is Gen Z the old people or the young people?
It's me.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
Gen Z. Yeah.
The young people.
They wouldn't see us coming.
Zebellion. What are they gonna what are they gonna do after their revolution? Communism, I hope.
I'll be in charge.
Okay, that's fine. I'll be fine then.
Okay, because the thing is,
Shakes.
I don't see any fireworks. Jesus Christ, it's starting to happen a lot.
Oh, I hear it now. Oh shit. What's going on? Yeah, it's guns. Sarah's expert knowledge of guns. That does not sound good. Shit, I don't know how I'm gonna save you if you get shot. Like, this is gonna be traumatic as fuck.
Hey,
I'm
listen.
scared.
Don't be surprised you see on the news something happening in the border.
It happens every holiday. It's bombs. Those aren't fireworks, comrade. They're artillery. The plan has begun. Gen Z is starting. It's fucking hilarious.
The revolution is here. It starts in Texas. Who saw that coming?
Love bombs. Okay. How Proudhon solves the housing question. I'm gonna read oh god, it's so long. Okay. I'm just gonna read for a little bit and then stop.
Okay.
Okay. In number 10 and the following numbers of the Volksstadt appears a series of 6 articles on the housing question. The articles are only worthy of attention because, apart from some long-forgotten would-be literary writings of the 40s, they are the first attempt to translate the Proudhonist... wait, how do we say it? How did you say it?
Proudhonist.
Is that right?
So I would pronounce it.
Okay, Proudhonist school to Germany. This represents such an enormous step backward in comparison with the whole course of development of German socialism, which delivered a decisive blow particularly to the Proudhonist ideas as far back as 25 years ago. In Marx, The Poverty of Philosophy, that's when he did it.
Yeah.
That is worthwhile answering it immediately. The so-called housing shortage, which plays such a great role in the press nowadays, does not consider oh, I didn't know that. Wow, that's funny that they were doing that then too. They were saying that there was a housing shortage. Okay, which plays such a great role in the press nowadays, does not consist in the fact that the working class generally lives in bad, overcrowded, and unhealthy dwellings. This shortage is not something peculiar to the present. It is not even one of the sufferings peculiar to the modern proletariat in contradistinction. Is that what does that say?
Contradistinction.
Contradistinction. The modern proletariat in contradistinction to all earlier oppressed classes. On the contrary, all oppressed classes in all periods suffered more or less uniformly from it. In order to make an end of this housing shortage, there is only one means: to abolish altogether the exploitation and oppression of the working class by the ruling class. What is meant today by housing shortage is the peculiar intensification of the bad housing conditions of the workers as a result of the sudden rush of population to the big towns, a colossal increase in rent, and still further aggravation of overcrowding in the individual houses, and the impossibility of finding a place to live in at all. And this housing shortage gets talked of so much only because it does not limit itself to the working class, but has affected the petty bourgeoisie also.
The housing shortage from which the workers and part of the petite bourgeoisie suffer in our modern big cities is one of the innumerable smaller secondary evils which result from present-day capitalist mode of production. It is not at all a direct result of the exploitation of the worker as a worker by the capitalist. This exploitation is the basic evil which the social revolution wants to abolish by abolishing the capitalist mode of production. The cornerstone of the capitalist mode of production is, however, the fact that our present social order enables the capitalist to buy the labor power of the worker at its value, but to extract from it much more than its value by making the worker work longer than is necessary to reproduce the price paid for the labor power. The surplus value produced in this fashion is divided among the whole class of capitalists and landowners, together with their paid servants, from the Pope and the Kaiser, down to the night watchman and below. We are not concerned here with how this distribution comes about, but this much is certain, that all those who do not work can live only on the pickings from their surplus value, which reach them in one way or another. Compare Marx's Capital, where this is propounded for the first time. The distribution of this surplus value produced by the working class and taken from it without payment among the non-working class proceeds amid extremely edifying squabbling and mutual swindling. Insofar as this distribution takes place by means of buying and selling, one of its chief methods is the cheating of the buyer by the seller, and in retail trade, particularly in the big cities, this has become an absolute condition of existence for the seller. When, however, the worker is cheated by his grocer or his baker, either in regard to the price or the quality of the merchandise, this does not happen to him in a specific capacity as a worker. On the contrary, as soon as a certain average measure of cheating has become the social rule in any place, it must be in the long run be adjusted by a corresponding increase in wages. The worker appears before the shopkeeper as a buyer, that is, as the owner of a money or credit, and hence not at all in his capacity as a worker, that is, as a seller of labor power. The cheating may hit him, and the poorer class as a whole, harder than it hits the richer social class, but is not an evil which hits him exclusively, which is peculiar to his class.
And it is just the same with the housing shortage. The growth of the big modern cities gives the land in certain areas, particularly in those areas which are centrally situated, an artificial and less often colossally increasing value. The buildings erected on these areas depress this value instead of increasing it, because they no longer correspond to the changed circumstances. They are pulled down and replaced by others. This takes place above all with the workers' houses, which are situated centrally, and whose rents, even with the greatest overcrowding, can never, or only very slowly, increase above a certain amount. They are pulled down, and in their stead, shops, warehouses, and public buildings are erected. Through its Haussmann in Paris, Bonapartism exploited this tendency tremendously for the swindling and private enrichment. Haussmann was prefect of the Seine department in the years 1853 through 70, and carried on big building alternations in Paris in the interest of the bourgeoisie. The bourgeoisie. He did not fail to profit himself also. But the spirit of Haussmann has also been abroad in London, Manchester, and Liverpool, and seems to feel itself just as much as home in Berlin and Vienna. The result is that the workers are forced out of the center of the towns towards the outskirts, that workers' dwellings and small dwellings in general become rare and expensive, and often altogether unobtainable. For under these circumstances, the building industry, which is offered a much better field for speculation by more expensive houses, builds workers' dwellings only by way of exception. This housing shortage, therefore, certainly hits the worker harder than it hits any more prosperous class, but it is just as little an evil which burdens the working class exclusively as the cheating of the shopkeeper, and it must, as far as the working class is concerned, when it reaches a certain level and attains a certain permanency, similarly find a certain economic adjustment. Okay, so should we talk about what's happening?
Yeah.
Okay, so it's talking about like the shuffling of like workers when they move into the town, like the center of the town is where the workers need to be, and then all of a sudden like the workers are moved out of that, right? And then the industry is put in the center of the town, and then the workers are pushed to the outskirts. That's what he was saying.
Yeah, they're but that's what's happening with the influx of new proletarians into the cities because the Industrial Revolution. And so agriculture is kind of going down. So people are losing their land and homes, so they're moving to the cities for jobs. So that increase in the cities means more money to be made by the capitalists. So since they want the more money, they remove the homes out of the way to create more factories or working buildings and stuff like that, or buildings for so the capitalists can profit off the workers. But where the people are going to go, they just put them off to the outskirts to separate them from their work. Alienation, basically.
Where was that? The housing shortage, or this housing shortage? Is that where I was at?
So you finish with, it must similarly find a certain economic adjustment. That's what you finished at.
Okay, hold on. Oh, okay. Yeah, I see him.
All right, so continue.
Oh, sorry, you can go.
Yeah. It is largely with just such sufferings as these which the working class endures in common with other classes, and particularly the petite bourgeoisie and petite bourgeois socialism, to which Proudhon belongs, prefers to occupy itself. And thus it is not at all accidental that our German Proudhonists seizes chiefly upon the housing question, which, as we have seen, is by no means exclusively a working class question, in that he declares it to be, on the contrary, a true, exclusively working class question. So the tenant is in the same position in relation to the housing owner as a wage worker in relation to the capitalist. This is totally untrue. In the housing question, we have two parties confronting each other, the tenant and the landlord or house owner. The former wishes to purchase from the latter the temporary use of a dwelling. He has money or credit. Even if he has to buy this credit from the house owner himself at a usurious price, in the shape of an additional of the rent.
And that's your down payment, that's your the thing that you put down. What's that, your deposit, They're talking about your deposit right now. So yeah, Zivus, this is exactly why we, we recognize that this is all still usually directly applicable to what we're going through right now, so that's why we want to take a look at people who have looked at it before us and done successful revolutions and shit,
Mm-hmm.
You gotta learn from the best.
Okay, so wait, you have to pay. So I'm saying that. So Tsunami mentioned that you can rent a parking spot in the city center a few miles from me for 20 grand a month.
Holy shit! A parking space.
Nah, I'm walking it.
I would live there.
20.
Live in the parking space.
I'm not paying 20 grand a month for a parking spot.
That is just.
I mean, that was more. That's not more. That's a little less than what I made in an entire year.
Right.
Ain't no way I'm paying that. Upward to 20 grand. Oh, buy a parking spot.
You just buy it. Okay. That's.
But rent is still probably a ridiculous amount.
Ugh.
Even then, 20 grand. Couldn't be me.
Supposed to be provided by the city for free. If you want people to be there. But this is elite parking, right?
Public transportation. Get those trolleys back. Bring more buses.
But the elite have access to things it's convenient.
They intentionally messed it up in this way. A lot of the car companies and oil companies intentionally set it up in a way in America to that we're completely dependent on cars. Yes, trains for a long distance choice, but inside the city, you don't really. I mean, I guess if you want to go a little bit farther in the city, you have to get there quicker. But buses and trolleys are still really good. Yeah, they set it up in a way that it's pretty much impossible to get around in the U.S. without a car, and most places have terrible public transportation. For example, in Texas, I think I've only ever taken the bus once. One time, my entire life, entire time I've lived here, I only taken the bus once because it's just such terrible transportation down here.
Right? Okay. Are we
We'll continue.
Okay. You're going
Yeah.
to...
It is a simple commodity sale. It is not a transaction between proletarian and bourgeois, because between worker and capitalist, the tenant, even if he is a worker, appears as a man with money. He must already have sold his commodity, a commodity peculiarly as his own, his labor power, to be able to appear with the proceeds as a buyer of the use of the dwelling or labor, or he must be in a position to give a guarantee of the impending sale of this labor power. The peculiar results which attend the sale of labor power to the capitalists are completely absent here. The capitalist causes to purchase the labor power first, to produce its own value, but secondly, to produce a surplus value, which remains in his hands for the time being, subject to distribution among the capitalist class. In this case, therefore, an excess value is produced. The sum total of the existing value is increased. In a renting transaction, the situation is quite different. No matter how much the landlord may overreach the tenant, it is still only a transfer of already existing, previously produced value. The total sum of values possessed by the landlord and the tenant together remains the same as it was before. The worker is always cheated of the part of the product of his labor, whether that labor is paid for by the capitalist below, above or at its value. The tenant only when he is compelled to pay for the dwelling above its value. It is therefore a complete misrepresentation of the relation between landlord and tenant to attempt to make it equivalent to the relation between worker and capitalist. On the contrary, we are dealing here with a quite ordinary commodity transaction between two citizens. In this transaction process, according to the economic laws which govern the sale of commodities in general, and in particular the sale of commodity, land, and property, the building and maintenance costs of the house or the part of the house in question enter first into the calculation. The value of the land, determined by the more or less favorable situation of the house, comes next. The relation between supply and demand existing at the moment decides in the end. This simple economic relation expresses itself in the mind of our Proudhonists as follows. The house, once it has been built, serves as a perpetual legal title to a definite fraction of social labor, although the real value of the house has been paid to the owner long ago, more than adequately in the form of rent. Thus, it comes about that a house which, for instance, was built 50 years ago, during this period, covers the original cost price 2, 3, 5, 10, and more times over in this rent yield.
Interesting. Here we have at once the whole Proudhon. Here we have at once the whole Proudhon. Firstly, it is forgotten that the rent must not only pay the interests on the building costs, but must also cover repairs and the average sum of bad debts, unpaid rents, as well as the occasional period when the house is untenanted, and finally pay off an annual sum the building capital which has been invested in a house which is perishable and which in time becomes uninhabitable and worthless. Secondly, it is forgotten that the rent must also pay interest on the increased value of the land upon which the building is erected, and that therefore a part of it consists of ground rent. Our Proudhonist immediately declares, it is true that this increase of value does not equitably belong to the landowner, since it comes about without his cooperation, but to society as a whole. However, he overlooks the fact that with this, he is in reality demanding the abolition of landed property, a point which would lead us too far if we went into it here. And finally, he overlooks the fact that the whole transaction is not one of buying the house from the owner, but of buying its use for a certain time. Proudhon, who never bothered himself about the real and actual conditions under which any economic phenomenon occurs, is naturally also unable to explain how the original cost of the price of a house is paid back 10 times over in the course of 50 years in the form of rent. Instead of examining and establishing this, not at all difficult questions economically, and discovering whether it is really in contradiction to economic laws, and if so, how, Proudhon rescues himself by a bold leap from economics into legal talk. The house, once it has been built, serves a perpetual legal title to a certain annual payment. How this comes about, and how the house becomes the legal title, on this Proudhon is silent. And yet, that is just what we should have explained. That is just what he should have explained. Had he examined it, he would have found that not all the legal titles in the world, no matter how perpetual, could give a house the power of obtaining its cost price back 10 times over in the course of 50 years and in the form of rent, but that only economic conditions, which may have social recognition in form of legal titles, can accomplish this, and which with this he would be as far as the start. Holy fucking shade. Engels is funny.
Engels is hilarious. I love it when he is
so spicy
on authority. And so these gentlemen think that when they have changed the name or the thing, they changed the meaning behind it too. All of these theorists are they just love insulting everybody else. You're just like what we would have considered dunking on people or whatever.
The whole Proudhonist teaching rests on this saving leap from economic reality into legal phraseology. Every time our good Proudhon loses... oh my god, every time our good Proudhon loses the economic hangs of things, and this happens to him with every serious problem. Oh my god! God damn! Fucking hell! Oh, okay, I'm gonna read that again because I'm laughing. I'm cackling. I'm sorry. The whole Proudhonist teaching rests on this saving leap from economic reality into legal phraseology. Every time our good Proudhon loses the economic hangs of things, and this happens to him with every serious problem, he takes refuge in the sphere of law and appeals to eternal justice. So fucking...
Keish says, I would not want to be Proudhon after reading this.
Oh, God. Okay.
Yeah, who said books are boring? You know, a lot of people always say, books and theory is boring. The dude is just straight up just insulting this guy.
It's fucking...
I'm like...
Let's go!
He went a whole, like...
I'm fucking crying
pages
over here.
of just saying this guy is stupid and wrong.
Ooh, it's like
Dude, that was just hilarious.
he quote tweeted the shit out of him. This is a quote
Yeah,
thread right here.
every time our good Proudhon loses the economic hang of things, and this happens to him with every serious problem, he takes refuge in the sphere of law and appeals to eternal justice. That's just absolutely hilarious because he's just like, he always loses because everything that's serious, he's wrong on.
Do you want to read now?
Hold on. So Black Vic says, I want a spin-off of Drunk History. That's Drunk Theory now. Hold on.
Well, here we go. I am actually could help you out with that in just a little bit. This is Red Bull and vodka. I'm at the club now.
So Nami says, we could construct a plan to translate this Twitter discourse and trick people to reading theory. Hey, listen, I kind of just tweeted the entirety of combating liberalism. I tweeted the entire thing, and I have it pinned. So, hey, listen, if you guys would only read tweets, then hey, just read it.
Right? Like, yeah, I tried to do it, but it was like gonna take me a really long time to do it. So I was like, I'll be right
I can only do that with short text, obviously.
Yeah, I was just gonna do all of State and Revolution.
That would be a lot.
I know. I'm like, here, you fucking assholes, read this.
Since you guys like reading Twitter so much.
Yeah, I'll just like at people, like be like, fuck you, look at this. Starting shit and getting people only like spice, but this is spice. You gotta open the book to figure it out. It's hilarious. Shoot,
a math for that.
We're getting a raid.
Historia Pública.
We're gonna read that sentence back to them too, because it's so funny. We're talking about just how funny theory actually is. Like, people are like, theory is boring, but I'm fucking cracking up reading this. Like, it's so funny.
Engels is hilarious.
Yeah.
Hotsky raid.
Oh my god, Hotsky! Here, we gotta do Hotsky. There it is.
This.
There it is.
Hayes would love a Hotsky
that was
raid.
so good. Welcome in. Thank you so much for the raid. We're the Red Army, and tonight we are reading you theory. We are reading The Housing Question by Friedrich Engels. And we're only like a little bit of the ways in, so if you want to stick around and listen.
This is where we are, and this is how much we have to go. I don't think we're going to get through it today.
Yeah, but we're going to try. We're going to do it. Thank you so much for being here. Theory is boring is something that people who have never read Mao says, right?
Mao is such a good writer. I mean, you'd have to be going out of your way to
not like it or not understand.
Bored. You'd have to intentionally not being paying attention to it when you're reading Mao to be like, I don't know what's going on.
Dali. What is Hotsky? Hotsky is Trotsky when he writes his letters. Hotsky, let's see. There's Hotsky. I'm not gonna say that though, because it makes me blush. Thank you for all the follows. Thank you, Diego Molotov. Ooh, that sounds fun. Pipe Cat, Trung. Thank you. Thanks for being here. Okay, you want to read that? Oh, actually, I want to read it again. Every time our good Proudhon loses the economic hangs of things, and this happens to him with every serious problem, he takes refuge in the sphere of law and appeals to eternal justice. Like, the shade. Beautiful. Okay, you can go.
You guys, hold on. Just one more person says, Communist starts says, theory is boring. Something that people who reads Hegel says, oh, man, I tried. I tried with Hegel. And I was just like, you know what? I'll just move on. But no, I do plan on trying to, on my own personal time, try to tackle Hegel again. All right, so I'm going to continue on at the housing question. Proudhon begins by taking this ideal of justice, of justice éternelle, from the judicial relations that correspond to the production of commodities. Thereby, it may be noted he proves, to the consolation of all good citizens, that the production of commodities is a form of production as everlasting as justice. Then he turns round and seeks to reform the actual production of commodities, and the actual legal system corresponding thereto, in accordance with this ideal. What opinion should we have as a chemist, who, instead of studying the actual laws of molecular changes in the composition and decomposition of matter, and on that foundation solving definite problems, claim to regulate the composition and decomposition of matter by means of the eternal ideas of naturalite and affinite? Do we really know any more about usury when we say it contradicts justice eternal, etiquette eternal, mutuality eternal, and other verities eternalis? Then the fathers of the church did when they said it was incompatible with gratia eternal, foi eternal, and la volonté eternal de Dieu. Our Prudonus does not fare any better than his lord and master. The rent agreement is one of the 1,000 exchanges which are as necessary in the life of modern society as the circulation of the blood in the bodies of animals. Naturally, it would be in the interest of the society if all these exchanges were pervaded by the conception of right. That is to say, if they were carried out everywhere according to the strict demands of justice. In a word, the economic life of society must, as Proudhon says, raise itself to the heights of economic right. In reality, as we know, exactly the opposite takes place. It is credible that 5 years after Marx had characterized Proudhonism so similarly and convincingly, precisely from this decisive angle, one can still print such confused stuff in the German language. What does rigmarole mean? Nothing more than the practical effects of the economic laws which govern present-day society run contrary to the author's sense of justice, and that he cherishes the pious wish that the matter might be so arranged as to remedy the situation. Yes, if toads had tails, they would no longer be toads. And it is then the capitalist mode of production not pervaded by a conception of right? Namely, that of its own right to exploit the workers? And if the author tells us that it is not his conception of right, are we one step further?
I'm gonna say it. I'm not gonna say it. Should I say it?
Say it. Say it.
Fine, I'm gonna say it. Do not say it.
Susan
I'm gonna
says-
say it. I kind of want to say it. Fine, I won't say it. Fine. Okay, I'm gonna read now. Wait, did you finish that paragraph?
I did.
Okay. But let us go back to the housing question. Our Proudhonist now gives his conception of justice free rein and treats us to the following moving declamation. We do not hesitate to assert that there is no more terrible mockery of the whole culture of our lauded century in the fact that in the big cities, 90% and more of the population have no place that they can call their own. The real key point of moral and family existence, hearth and home, is being swept away by the social whirlpool. In this respect, we are far below the savages. The troglodyte has his cave, the Australian aborigine his clay hut. Jesus Christ, Proudhon. The Indian has his own hearth. Jesus. The modern proletariat is practically suspended in midair, etc. He's gross. In this,
Yeah, I'm pretty sure Proudhon was racist.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Fucking
clear.
racist.
It's clearly racist. Like,
Yeah.
in this Jeremiad, we have Proudhonism and its whole reactionary form. Exactly. Thank you. Engels knows. Like, that was totally reactionary. In order to create the modern revolutionary class of the proletariat, it was absolutely necessary to cut the umbilical cord which still bound the worker of the past to the land. The hand weaver, who had his little house, garden, and field along with his loom, was a quiet, contented man in all godliness and respectability. Despite all misery and despite all political pressure, he doffed his cap to the rich, to the priests, and to the officials of the state, and inwardly was altogether a slave. It was precisely modern large-scale industry which has turned the worker, formerly chained to the land, into a complete propertyless proletarian, liberated from all traditional fetters and free as a jailbird. It is precisely this economic revolution which has created the sole conditions under which the exploitation of the worker in its final form, in the capitalist mode of production, can be overthrown. And now comes this tearful Proudhonist and bewails the driving of the workers from hearth and home as though it were a great retrogression instead of the being of a very first condition for their intellectual emancipation. 27.
Okay, so
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
yeah, really quick. So Murrow asked, like, is he the one that was anti-Semitic? No, that was Bakunin. And just talk about him really quick. A lot of anarchists still defend him and say that, oh, he didn't hate the state because he thought they were run by Jewish people, even though he did say that. And they said, oh, well, you know what, that it still doesn't factor into the fact, it does not take away what his theory and what he has to say. Like, well, his theory hinges on the fact that he thought Jewish people run the state, so he hated the state.
Yikes.
It's a pretty easy thing to... you can't just say, oh yeah, he hated the state, and he thought Jewish people ran the state. But those two weren't connected at all.
Yeah, Sebs, it was not great. Also, fishball cap. Thank you. I had this.
Wait,
Okay.
Did you just say it?
I said it, yeah. 27 years ago, I described in The Condition of the Working Class in England the main features of this process of driving the workers from hearth and home as it took place in the 18th century in England. The infamies of which the landowners and factory owners were guilty in so doing, and the deleterious effects, material and moral, which this expulsion inevitably had on the workers concerned in the first place, are there also described as they deserve. But it could enter my head to this regard, which was, in the circumstances, an absolutely
Holy
necessary
crap.
historical process of what?
Someone just shared in the chat of what something a Proudhon has said.
And what was it? Was it
Well,
not
it's
great?
first of all, it's titled "On the Jews."
Okay. That doesn't...
Yeah.
Okay, so Proudhon...
That's just the title.
Oh, no! Did he write that?
Yeah.
Oh,
that
no! What?
is. Wow.
Oh, my God. Yeah, Proudhon is bad.
Yeah.
Oh, no. Oh, God. The first sentence is just not okay. It is not
Yeah.
okay. Not
Starts
okay.
off. Yeah, the choice says Jesus Christ exited after the first sentence.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was. I didn't read the whole thing. I just read the first couple
You
parts.
don't even need to read the whole thing. We know where Proudhon is at. Oh, fucking hell. Cancel.
Holy
for sure.
shit.
Okay, where the fuck was I at?
Okay, that is just wow.
It's not good.
Nope.
Okay. But it could
Anyway,
enter my
let's.
head to this regard, which was in the circumstances an absolutely necessary historical process of development as a retrogression below the savages. Impossible. The English proletarian of 1872 is on an indefinitely higher level than the rural weaver of 1776, and with his hearth and home, with the troglodyte in his cave, and the Australian aborigine with his clay hut, and the Indian with his hearth ever accomplished a June insurrection and a Paris commune. Jesus. Oh no. That the situation of the workers has in general become materially worse since the indoctrination of capitalist production on a large scale is doubted only by the bourgeoisie, god damn it, but should therefore look backward longingly to the likewise very meager flesh pots of Egypt, to
We're reading Engels, Sean.
it's Engels, flesh pots of Egypt, to the rural small-scale industry, which produced only servile souls, or to the savages on the contrary. He was quoting.
Yeah, he's quoting Proudhon.
Yeah.
And he,
Only the proletariat can, by modern large-scale industry, liberated from all inherited fetters, including those which chained it to the land and driven in herds into the big towns, is in a position to accomplish the great social transformation, which will put an end to all class exploitation and all class rule. The old rural hand weavers with hearth and home would never have been able to do it. They would have never been able to conceive of such an idea, much less be able to desire and carry it out. Okay, you can read this long one.
For Proudhon, on the other hand, the whole industrial revolution of the last 100 years, the introduction of steam power and large-scale factory production, which substitutes machinery for hand labor and increases the productivity of labor 1,000-fold, is highly repugnant occurrence, something which really ought never to have taken place. The petit bourgeois Proudhon aspires to a world in which each person turns out a separate and independent product that is immediately consumable and exchangeable on the market. Then, as long as each person receives back the full value of his labor in the form of another product, eternal justice, it's satisfied and the best possible world created. But this best possible world of Proudhon has already been nipped in the bud and trodden underfoot by the advance of industrial development, which long ago destroyed individual labor and all the big branches of industry, and which is destroying it daily, more and more in the smaller and even smallest branches, which is setting social labor supported by machinery, and the harnessed forces of nature in its place, and whose finished product immediately exchangeable or consumable. It is the joint work of many individuals through whose hands it has had to pass. And it is precisely this industrial revolution which has raised the productive power of human labor to such a high level that, for the first time in the history of mankind, the possibility exists, given a rational division of labor among all, of producing not only enough for the plentiful consumption of all members of society, and for an abundance reserve fund, but also of leaving each individual sufficient leisure so that what is really worth preserving in historically inherited culture, science, art, forms of intercourse, may not only be preserved, but converted from a monopoly of the ruling class into the common property of the whole of society, and may be further developed. And here is the decisive point. As soon as a productive power of human labor has risen to this height, every excuse disappears from the existence of a ruling class. After all, the ultimate basis on which class differences were defended was always, there must be a class which need not plague itself with the productions of its daily subsistence. in order that it may have time to look after the intellectual work of society. This talk, which up to now had its great historical justification, has been cut off at the root once and for all by the Industrial Revolution of the last 100 years. The existence of a ruling class is becoming more and more hindrance to the development of industrial productive power, and equally so that of science, art, and especially of forms of cultural intercourse. They never were greater bores than our modern bourgeoisie. All this is nothing to friend Proudhon. He wants external justice and nothing else. Each shall receive in exchange for this product the full proceeds of its labor, the full value of his labor. But to calculate this in the product of modern industry is a complicated matter. For modern industry obscures a particular share of the individual in the total product, which in the old individual handicraft was obviously represented by the finished product. Further, modern industry eliminates more and more individual exchange, on which Proudhon's whole system is built up, namely, direct exchange between two producers, each of whom takes the product of the other in order to consume it. Consequently, a reactionary streak runs through the whole of Proudhonism, an aversion to the Industrial Revolution and a desire, sometimes overtly, sometimes covertly expressed, to drive the whole of modern industry out of the temple, steam engines, mechanical looms, and the rest of the business, and to return to old, respectable hand labor. That we would then lose 999,000 of our productive power. That the whole of humanity would be condemned to the worst possible labor, slavery. That starvation would become the general rule. What does all that matter if only we succeed in organizing exchange in such a fashion that each receives the full proceeds of his power, and the external justice is realized? Fiat justita peruta mundus. Let justice be done through the whole world perish. And the world would perish in this Proudhonist counter-revolution if it were possible to carry it out.
It is, moreover, self-evident that, with social production conditioned by modern large-scale industry, it is possible to assure each person the full proceeds of his labor, so far as this phrase has any meaning at all. And it has meaning only if it is extended to mean not that each individual worker becomes the possessor of the full proceeds of his labor, but that the whole of society, consisting entirely of the workers, becomes the possessor of the total proceeds of its labor, which is partly distributed among the members for consumption, partly uses for replacing and increasing the means of production, and partly stores up as a reserve fund for production and consumption. After what has been said above, we already know in advance how our Proudhonist will solve all great housing questions. On the one hand, we have the demand that each worker own his own home in order that we may not remain below the savages,
quote unquote.
On the other hand, we have the assurance that the 2, 3, 5, and 10-fold repayment of the original cost of the price of the house in form of rent, as it actually takes place, is based on a legal title, and that this legal title is in contradiction to eternal justice. The solution is simple. We abolish the legal title and declare, in virtue of eternal justice, that the rent paid to the payment on the account of the cost of the dwelling itself, if one has so arranged on premises that they already contain the conclusion in them, then of course it demands no greater skill than any charlatan possesses to produce the already prepared result from the bag and to point to unshakable logic whose result it is. And so it happens here, the abolition of rented dwellings proclaimed as a necessity, and indeed in the form of the demand is put forward for the conversion of every tenant to the owner of his own dwelling. How are we to do that? Very simple. Rented dwellings will be redeemed. The previous house owner will be paid the value of W's house to the last farthing. Rent, instead of being paid as previously the tribute which the tenant must pay to the perpetual title of the capital, will be from the day when the redemption of the dwellings is proclaimed, an exactly fixed sum paid by the tenant to provide the annual installment for the payment of the dwelling which has passed into possession of the tenant. Society transforms itself this way into a totality of independent and free owners' dwelling. The Proudhonist finds it a crime against eternal justice that the house owner can, without working, obtain ground rent and interest out of the capital he has invested in the house. He decrees that this must cease, that capital invested in house shall produce no interest in so far as it represents purchased land property, no ground rent either. Now we have seen that hereby the capitalist mode of production, the basis of present-day society, is in no way affected. The pivot on which the exploitation of the worker turns is the sale of labor power to the capitalist, and the use which the capitalist makes of this transaction, in that he compels the worker to produce far more than the paid value of the labor power amounts to. It is this transaction between capitalist and worker which produces all the surplus value, which is afterwards divided in the form of ground rent, commercial profit, interest on capital taxes, etc., among the various subspecies of capitalists and their servants. And now our Proudhonist comes along and believes that if we were to forbid one single subspecies of capitalists, and that of such capitalists who purchase no labor power directly and therefore cause no surplus value to be produced, to receive profit of interest would be a step forward. The mass of unpaid labor taken from the working class would remain exactly the same, even if the house owners were to be deprived tomorrow of the possibility of receiving ground rent and interest. However, this does not prevent our Proudhonists from declaring. Okay, so Engels' beef with Proudhon is that Proudhon thinks that, getting rid of landlords would, be revolutionary, or what is, because it says that Engels is saying that, yeah, if we do that, there's still going to be the exploitation between, the proletariat and the bourgeoisie, and the fact that they're selling their labor, right? That wouldn't affect the labor selling.
The housing is still being affected. It's just getting rid of the middleman, I guess. But to say that, okay, look, everything's fixed.
So that's his problem, is that Proudhon thinks that will help, or
That's what I'm guessing. And of course, there's definitely, things with theory that you have to read multiple times to actually get it. You read it the second and third time, okay, you know what? I think I got it now.
Well, what do you think he's saying right here?
See, I'm trying to figure out what he is saying.
Well, what does that mean, Gray Cipher? I don't even know how to say the A with the squiggle. Now dormia sem esa. I probably just said something terrible. I don't know what I said. I'm just reading Portuguese. Reggie, don't worry about it.
Okay.
Landlord's right has the origins of robbery. Haha. Maybe I'm not getting it. Do you guys get it? Chat, do you get what he's saying? What's he saying to me here? So if we were to forbid one single subspecies of capitalists, and that such capitalists who purchase that labor power directly and therefore also cause no surplus labor or surplus value to be produced, to receive profit or interest, it would be a step forward. What the fuck does he mean? Reread it? Okay. And now our Proudhonist comes along and believes that if we were to forbid one single subspecies of capitalists, and at that, such capitalists who purchase no labor power, and therefore also cause no surplus value to be produced, to receive profit or interest, it would be a step forward. The mass of unpaid labor taken from the working class would remain exactly the same if the house owners were to be deprived tomorrow of the possibility of receiving ground rent and interest. Right? So he's saying that the relationship between the working class would not change even if we stop charging like extra rent. Right?
Yeah, the proletarian is still going to be the proletarian. They're still being, their surplus value is still being extracted.
Happy Halloween! Yeah. Yeah, that's what I thought he was saying, no quiche. Okay. The abolition of rent dwellings is thus one of the most fruitful and magnificent efforts which has ever sprung from the womb of revolutionary ideas. Oh, dear Jesus. Okay, I can see why Engels is addressing this now. That's the fucking quote from Proudhon. The abolition of rent dwelling is thus one of the most fruitful and magnificent efforts which has ever sprung from the womb of revolutionary idea, and it must become one of the primary demands of social democracy. Okay, I get why he's addressing
social
this
democracy had meant something different than what we consider it today. That's what social democracy is basically what we would consider socialism.
Okay. Hold on, my cam just broke. Where'd my cam go?
Cam keeps on going out.
I know. Hi. Okay. This is exactly the type of market cry of the master Proudhon himself, whose cackling is always an inverse ratio to the size of the eggs laid. Oh, fucking hell. This is exactly the type of market cry of the master Proudhon himself, whose cackling was always an inverse ratio to the size of the eggs laid. Chef's kiss. And now imagine the fine state of things if each worker, petty bourgeois and bourgeois, were compelled by paying annual installments to become the first part owner and then full owner of his dwelling. In the industrial district in England, where there is large-scale industry and small workers' houses, and each married worker occupies a little house of his own, there might possibly be some sense in it. But the small-scale industry in Paris and in one of the most big towns, this town was Bigly, on the continent, one of the largest towns in the continent, is accompanied by large houses in each of which 10, 20, or 30 families live together. On the day of the world delivering decree, when the redemption of rent dwelling is proclaimed, Peter is working in an engineering work in Berlin, and yet later he is owner of, if you like, of the 15th part of his dwelling, consisting of a little room on the 5th floor of a house somewhere in the neighborhood of Hamburger Tor. He then loses his work and soon finds himself in a similar dwelling on the 3rd floor of a house in the Polthof of Hanover, with a wonderful view on the courtyard. After 5 months' stay there, he's just acquired 1/36 of the property when a strike sends him to Munich and compels him, by a stay of 11 months, to take on himself ownership in exactly 1/80ths of a rather gloomy property on the street level behind the Angergasse. Further removal, such as nowadays so often occurs to workers, saddle him further with 7/360th of a no less desirable residence in St. Gallen, 23rd, 1/80th of another one in Leeds, and 347th of a 56,223rd. Jesus. To reckon is out exactly in order that eternal justice may have nothing to complain about, of a third dwelling in Sarange. And now, what is the use for our Peter of all these shares in these dwellings? Who is to give him the real value of these shares? When is he to find the owner or owners of these remaining shares in his various one-time dwellings? And what exactly are the property relations of any big house whose floors hold, let's say, 20 dwellings, in which, when the redemption period has elapsed and rented dwellings are abolished, belongs perhaps to 300 part owners who are scattered in all quarters of the globe? Our Prudonists will answer that that time the Prudonist Exchange Bank will exist and will pay out anyone at any time the full labor proceeds for any labor produced, and will therefore pay out also the full value of a share in a dwelling. But in the first place, we are not at all concerned with the Prudonist Exchange Bank, since it is nowhere even mentioned in the article on the housing question. And secondly, it rests on the peculiar error that if someone wants to sell a commodity, he will necessarily also find a buyer for it, for its full value. And thirdly, that has already gone bankrupt in England more than once under the name of Labor Exchange Bazaar before Proudhon invented it. The whole conception that the worker should buy his dwelling rests in the turn of the reactionary basic outlook of the Proudhonism, already emphasized, according to which the conditions created by modern large-scale industry are diseased excrescences, and that society must be led violently, i.e. against the trends which it has been following for hundreds of years, to a condition in which the old stable handicraft of the individual is the rule, which as a whole is nothing but the idealized restoration of small-scale enterprise. Oh my god, is he saying Proudhon is like, bring back small businesses? That's what he's saying. That's so funny. Which has been ruined and is still being ruined if the workers are only flung back into these stable conditions. That's funny. Sarah.
Alrighty.
Which as a whole is nothing but the idealized restoration. Okay, where was I? If the social whirlpool has been happily abolished, then the worker naturally could also make use of property in hearth and home, but the above redemption theory appears less ridiculous. Proudhon only forgets that in order to accomplish this, he must first of all put back the clock of world history by 100 years, and that thereby he would make a present-day workers into just such narrow-minded, crawling, sneaking slaves as their grandfathers were. Jesus Christ. As far, however, as this Proudhonist solution of a housing question contains any rational and practically applicable content, it is already being carried out today, but this realization does not spring from the womb of revolutionary idea, but from the big bourgeois himself. Let us listen to the excellent Spanish newspaper La Emancipación of Madrid of March 16th, 1872. You want to
Okay.
read this one?
Yes.
Okay.
There is still another means of solving the housing question. The way proposed by Proudhon, which dazzles at first glance, but on close